Aloha, namaste. This is Alexis Cox with Radha Home Yoga, and I'm here to bring you the forecast for our lunar eclipse that we're having. We just had our solar eclipse 2 weeks ago on Christmas Day, and now we are going to have the second in the pair of eclipses, and it's going to be the full moon lunar eclipse in Gemini, in the star of Punarvasu. Now, Punarvasu is at the end of Gemini, the end of Gemini, beginning of Cancer, and it is a star that brings back the light. It's literally the return of the light. After the storm that happens in Ardra, the nakshatra previous, we see the birth of the Earth Mother, of Aditi, and she's the goddess of this star. So if you remember from not my most recent forecast on Christmas Day, but on the one right before that, when we had our full moon in Mrigashira in Taurus, I discussed the story, the myth of how the creator wants to mate with his own daughter, and she flees to Earth in the shape of a deer, and with a deer form, and he tries to go after her, and in the meantime gets shot down by all these other deities who have formed their anger in Rudra, in this fierce form of Shiva, and shoots him down. That when he falls to Earth, there's great storms, great calamity, great tragedy even, and when the rain stops and the storms are ending and the howling is over, Rudra's the howler, you see new growth, new birth, and this is Aditi. This is the Earth Mother, and she is both the mother of the Creator himself, having come from the stuff, being the stuff that Brahma makes the world with, makes the people with, but also is born of that creation, of the Daksha is like the creator that is created from Brahma to make the beings. So it gets complicated, and it requires sort of a understanding of the entire Vedic system to truly get it. But the Rig Veda will say that, there's a quote actually, is that Aditi comes from Daksha, but Daksha comes from Aditi. So it's a circular reality of the mother being born and birthing. And the return of the light is also related to something happening again and again, repeated patterns. So again and again we have falls, and again we return to our light. And this happens for each one of us individually. It happens for us socially. It happens for us, in the world and in the universe. Again and again, again and again, this pattern repeats itself. Darkness overwhelms, we fall, we have a great fall, and we find the light again. And so here is a place where we have great potential to, birth something new, and to new beginnings, to allowing whatever was, harsh and hard and tragic and painful that we may have experienced, especially on the heels of that eclipse on Christmas. Eclipses are yes, in one moment. There's a time frame where the eclipse is happening, but the window of eclipse happenings, if you will, is leading up to it and afterwards, especially after the solar eclipse, because there's the lunar eclipse now. So we're like still in this window of time between the two, and great speedy lengths of karma will take place in these periods of time. Like we'll advance a lot karmically, or we won't, and we'll just experience a lot of tragedy in the actual world. The eclipses are not times when things of this world work real well. They're times when we're in sort of this otherworldly state, and the best use of that energy is to be in that otherworldly state, to literally be in a meditative state or something like this, where you can receive downloads of information and have lightning flashes of insight, as opposed to making something happen in the real world, which is fighting against the forces. So this sort of delusional craziness can occur in these times if you're trying too hard to make things happen in the real world. If you are willing and accepting of this sort of energetic that comes from the mystery and from the great unknown, then you'll fare better in these times for sure. And of course it will depend on what house it is for you and what planets are affected and all these other factors that come into play. But this, that past eclipse really had a lot to do with our beliefs and our ideals. And we're now in this place of like information and facts, the Gemini realm of knowledge and information and knowing things, and not having faith and belief in them, but knowing, through research, through study, through information. So, and communication as well. So we see that there's the search for truth that happens with Mrigashira. The full moon at this point a month ago was in the Taurus part of Mrigashira, but Mrigashira also flanks into Gemini. And then we see the part where there's an epic storm where, something hits the fan. And then we see the part where we return to our light and we return to our birthright, which is to be both created and creators, and that we are of this light and that we can make new things come out of the shadows or the ashes or the remnants or the soggy soil of the storm that we experienced. And so this is a powerful time right now for us, and we're moving into this new Gregorian year. We're in 2020 now, and we see at the end of this month a big move astrologically as Saturn, the planet that stays essentially for 2.5 years in a sign, is making his way into his own sign of Capricorn. So we're going to see that the capacity to feel uplifted by our beliefs is going to grow, because Jupiter has already been in his own sign of Sagittarius since November, but Saturn has still been there, sitting court there and constricting our beliefs and holding us to a place of fear within our beliefs. So once we can collectively move into a place where our fear and our commitments are more situated in their own home field, in their own playing court, which is Capricorn, we will see that maybe we can use that more utilitarian effort, that focus where we can roll up our sleeves and do the hard work and do the long haul, work for the longer goal, and really humble ourselves, as opposed to just spreading fear through beliefs and things like that, which is what's really been happening. And this will, again, not just happen in our own lives, but it'll happen on the world stage as well, and in our society and wherever you live in your community. Individually, it will affect a different part of your life. And there are people who are going to have it be more challenging than others based on what house it is and based on what planets they have there. That there's no doubt of that. But it will still be effectively, even for those people, a positive shift, because Saturn, being in higher intelligence and higher wisdom and understanding of its own purpose and its own strength, which is to be humble, to be hardworking, to be committed, and to use fear in a way where things get done and where a long-term goal is achieved, as opposed to using fear to, run from things or fight or, restrict other people, constrict yourself and constrict your beliefs, which is a lot of what we've seen. Also just the departure of the South Node K2 and Saturn is a positive for all of us, because that South Node has us sort of withdrawing from an area of our life, right now Sagittarius, where it's like something we don't want to deal with really, and we feel an aversion to it. And so having Saturn there, where we're committed and hardworking, but also quite scared and wanting to avoid from that perspective, is a harsh mix that we've been dealing with, this reality that we've had for the last year since K2 moved into Sagittarius and Saturn was already there. So it's been a tough year, on the heels of another tough year of the year before when Mars and K2 were together. So it's going to be uplifting for all of us in many ways, and more focused on what we're doing, what we're moving forward on. At the moment, we do have this lunar eclipse with Rahu, with the North Node, and that's a very erratic kind of an energy. If K2 is where we sort of laser focus in and avoid something because we have a disdain for it, Rahu is where we don't know. We're open, and yet we're so open we're like wide open mouths that just want to eat everything, and we want to try everything, and we want to see everything, and we want to know everything. And in this case, we definitely want to know everything because it's Gemini. But we don't have that digestive capacity to actually take in the information and distill it and formulate positive thesis on what we're taking in. We just have information overload. And that's been an issue, since this cycle, which was the end of March last year, is when our nodal axis moved to this Gemini Sagittarius, to this axis. We have had that sort of obsession with information, obsession with facts, obsession with communication, but a withdrawal from the faith and beliefs and ideals that we felt fear, constriction, and commitment around. So it's been a tough dynamic. And this eclipse is not bringing it to an end, because it's not the end of this eclipse cycle, but it is bringing a certain opening for us, a new beginning on how we can go forward with information, how we can go forward with our communication, how we can go forward with what we know and what we believe intact, and still create something in this world that is beautiful, and that is as imperfect as we are, but yet divine still in its essence. And this is a truth we all have. This is a capacity we all have, and this is something we collectively have capacity for. And more than having a capacity for it, it's our birthright, and it's our purpose. I mean, it's what we must do. So this is a more positive note in the sense that it's more beginnings rather than endings, and it's more somewhere we're excited to be, and somewhere we want to go, and something we want to open up and free up. But there's a newness. There's a newness and a fumbling that comes from that newness, and a lack of previous experience, and maybe even a lack of willingness to listen to other people's advice or people who do have experience, and a desire to sort of make these mistakes on our own. And of course, you can see how that might be dangerous in the wrong hands and in the wrong playing field, with the wrong players. There can be a lot of damage and destruction that's done with that fumbling energy that's unwilling to listen to anyone or anything or any advice. So we each have our mistakes to make personally, and then we have the collective conscious mistakes to make. And we have to recognize that while we can do little things in the big picture, for sure we can make change in society, make change in our community, the biggest change we can ever make is in ourselves. There is no bigger change. There is no bigger shift that will happen. We can't keep pointing the finger out, looking at the trash on the side of the road and complaining about it, and not ever picking up a piece yourself, or continuing to produce just as much yourself without thinking about the effect that has. It's pointless, and it will never get us anywhere. So until we take that responsibility within ourselves to really look at our ways of communicating, the information we bring in and then bring out again, and what it is we're using, what our buddhi, our discernment, what is that discernment based in? What are we what are we believing to be true, and how are we discerning that truth? And where's that coming from? So these are all big questions we're going to have to really look at, and there'll be a lot of trial and error and a lot of failure in that. And that is life. That is us. We still have this whole cluster of planets in Sagittarius, so we are not away from the beliefs yet. We are very much entrenched in them. Saturn is still there till the end of the month. We have Jupiter solidly in his own sign of Sagittarius now. We have the Sun still there for a little bit longer, not too much. But we do still have our light, our consciousness, and our higher power and authority in that place of belief. So it's still where we're holding court in many ways. And the full moons are always like reflective points from where the new moon was. So and they don't always happen in that succession. Sometimes it's sometimes the cycle will actually begin with the full moon in terms of where the sun is. In this case, we had our new moon in Sagittarius. Now we're having the counterpoint in Gemini, the full moon, where the light is shining on the other side of that. yes, we have staunch beliefs. Yes, we have strong opinions. Yes, there's all this fear in the world. And yes, there's all these issues. But now what's the information? What's the facts? What's the details? And how are we discerning not only what we're taking in, but what we're putting out again? What is the process that our buddhi is using? And again, individual and collective. It's happening in all the realms. And we have Mercury joined our sun, and Ketu and Saturn and Jupiter. So our actual ruler of Gemini and our buddhi itself, our actual discriminatory aspect is in Sagittarius, and not in its best dignity, because we do have a tendency to stand on our pulpit. We do have a tendency to argue ad nauseum our beliefs when we see Mercury in Sagittarius, especially joined all those other planets. Now, Mercury's at 26 degrees, the sun is at 25 degrees, so it's also deeply combust. We see that we might feel unheard, and we might feel some like anger around that, and our way of acting that anger out is often kind of like in a joke or something with Mercury, a tendency to maybe cut down someone else's beliefs or say little off-the-cuff comments and remarks as a way of dealing with the fact that we feel unheard ourselves. So all things to think about and realize. Eclipses are times to dial in, to meditate, mantra, amazing, practicing chanting again and again, these vibrational sounds that mean so much, not in the same way that a normal prayer or English language thing might mean, or even Spanish language or whatever. But when you have these mathematically sound languages, these ancient languages, they resonate frequencies when you say the mantras again and again and again, and they can clear old pathways that you have created, samskaras, things that are stuck in you that you cannot release yourself out of consciously, or just using thought or will alone. This is a time. This is a time to embrace that mantra, to embrace that chanting. If you don't have a practice of your own, or it's not something that you feel comfortable with, you can listen. You can, find some chanting and put it on, or you can meditate. You can, walk in nature, do all these different things that help us. But because it's Gemini and words are involved and thoughts are involved, you got to do something to break up the thought patterns. It's really the only way to release that, especially with this influx, with Rahu being there and the eclipse. It's like an influx of information, and especially depending on where your own Mercury is and where your own, and what Gemini is in your chart, it could be a lot of delusion involved here, and a lot of lack of awareness and capacity to handle what's coming your way. So the more you can move into that meditative space, the better. We do still have Mars in his own sign in Scorpio, and Venus has moved into Aquarius. So last time when I was here with you, we had Mars just moving into Scorpio. Now Mars is solidly into Scorpio. We're very much all about our discipline and our personal need for action, courage, discipline, the self path, going down into the shadows and really facing our fears. And this is powerful and potent and important in this time, that we have that self-reflection and the discipline to show up and do those practices that help us get there. Venus, our planet of love and relationships, if you remember, was in Capricorn, where I was saying that we're really going to be focusing on the long goal and the utilitarian quality of our relationships. What do we get out of it? How does it serve our bigger purpose and our bigger picture? Now Venus is in Aquarius, which is also ruled by Saturn. What you see here is more of like a universal love, a love that is like wanting to fix things in society and wanting to connect over ideas and over big picture things and the systems and the things that we use and need in our society and our world, and how can we make them better? How can we be more futuristic and move past what's not working, which is a lot, and this kind of vision. So that's an overall experience for us. Of course, individually, we each have different planets ruling our seventh house, and we have different houses that Aquarius is going to bring up for us. But that idea of moving forward into the future and finding something new and different and new ways of doing things is going to be there for all of us in some way or another. I hope this is helpful for you. The actual time where the moon and the sun will be exactly opposite one another is going to be 11:21 a.m. Here, Pacific Standard Time. So on January 10th, on Friday, so we won't be seeing any eclipsing of the moon here, but where it's dark, there will be the actual visual of the eclipse. And as always, staying inside, meditating, these kind of things are really recommended, not sort of going out to witness it. It's an internal experience, an internal witnessing that must occur. If you like this video, you're welcome to comment or share, like. If you are interested in finding out how these alignments affect you personally, please reach out on my contact link and let me know, and we can set up a reading. We can do it either by Zoom or video chat, or we can do a phone reading. And also I do recorded readings for those who we can't set up a time. So have a blessed full moon eclipse, and I will see you again very soon. Namaste.